All righty, people are going to keep coming in, but I'm going to get us going here. Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy. I'm the marketing and social media coordinator here at IT Revolution. Since 2013, we've been publishing books on leadership and modern ways of working, mostly within technology departments. We've published such books as The Phoenix Project, The DevOps Handbook, Team Topologies, Sooner, Safer, Happier, and many more. As we celebrate our 10th anniversary, many of our books go beyond technology departments to talk directly to the business world at large. At this point, technology is so vital that in a way, any company is a technology company, regardless of their industry, and they can all benefit from similar discussions of leadership and modern ways of working. Beyond Agile Auditing, 3 core components to revolutionize your internal audit practices by Clarissa Lucas is one such book that can be valuable to a wide range of departments and roles. In it, Clarissa discusses how to take concepts from the way technology departments have been transforming over the last 10 years and apply them to internal audit. Whether you're an auditor yourself or someone who periodically participates in internal audits with your department, there are many things you can do to facilitate this change and make internal audits more valuable, satisfying, and even fun. Now, we're going to spend about the next 20 minutes to half an hour going over the basic concepts from the book, and then there will be some time for questions. So now's a good time to start writing them down if you have a place, and we'll use the Q&A function in the chat to address those questions. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Clarissa.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucy. Let me just pull this up. All right. So I want to take a quick minute just to thank everyone for joining us today. I am so excited to introduce you to my book, Beyond Agile Auditing, on its publication day, which is today. If you haven't already ordered your copy, go on and head on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or the IT Revolution's website and get your copy now. It's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook versions. So regardless of your preferred learning style, there's a format that's going to suit your individual needs. So let's face it, auditing can be kind of a painful experience for both auditors and for audit clients. And a big part of that is because the world around us is changing faster than ever before, and our old ways of working just can't keep up. So for those of you who are in the technology world, you know that older ways of working can't keep up and haven't been able to keep up in business and technology. And we're experiencing that same thing with internal auditing. So Beyond Agile Auditing is about breaking free from old ways of working and constricting frameworks so auditors can really start adding more value and reduce those audit-induced headaches, both for ourselves as auditors and for our audit clients. It's also about moving past that tired auditor versus client mentality where people fear their auditors and see them as roadblocks. Sometimes we'll hear, we can't do this because the auditors won't let us. We have got to get past that. Beyond Agile Auditing shows auditors and clients how to work together, leveraging each other's strengths to help each other succeed. And that solves that age-old problem of auditors versus clients. So let me introduce myself. I am Clarissa Lucas, and I've spent most of my 15+ year career in internal audit or another risk assurance type role. I hold the Certified Internal Auditor, Certified Information Systems Auditor, and Certified Investments and Derivatives Auditor designations, and I currently lead a technology audit team. I'm also a professional speaker and published author. I've spoken at a number of Institute of Internal Auditors, ISACA, and IT Revolution conferences over the past few years. And I've published, in addition to my first book, articles for both the Institute of Internal Auditors and IT Revolution. And so most of my career has been as an auditor, but I have spent some time, as we used to say, on the other side of the table as an audit client. So I've got a healthy perspective as to what it's like to be that feared auditor and what it's like to fear those auditors, or at least what it's like not to be thrilled when I found out that I was going to be audited. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Gallup's Strength Finders assessment, but it's an assessment you take to identify your top 5 strengths and learn how to leverage them effectively. Well, harmony is one of my top 5 strengths according to that assessment. And for me, it really comes forward when you have situations where auditors and audit clients don't get along and don't effectively work together. The harmony in me struggles there. And that was one of the catalysts for the experiences that I share in the book and what ultimately led to these better ways of working called Auditing with Agility, and the book itself, Beyond Agile Auditing. All right, so let's address the elephant in the room: auditors versus clients. I mentioned that I've been on both sides of that table and experienced what it's like to be the bad guy, the auditor, and I've also experienced what it's like to be audited. Historically, auditors and clients haven't always had the best relationships. I will say that we have certainly come a long way in the past few years, but there are still some challenges getting in the way of a truly valuable partnership between these two groups. And now I said partnership very intentionally. Just tolerating each other and dealing with each other, it only goes so far. But when we partner with each other, we leverage each other's strengths and unlock a whole new experience. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I get super excited about this, so rein myself back in. I mentioned before that Beyond Agile Auditing is about breaking free from those older ways of working and those constricting and confining frameworks. Traditionally, we perform audits using a waterfall approach. Now, for those of you in the technology world, you know what I mean when I say waterfall, and you're probably wondering why on earth anybody still uses it consistently in every situation. What I mean by waterfall auditing is taking a staged, gate-based approach to auditing. So auditors will start each audit engagement with the planning phase. They're going to thoughtfully and thoroughly build out a solid plan for that audit, identify the key objectives, key risks, and key controls. And then they articulate how they're going to test all of those controls. Once they've concluded their planning, the auditors get approval from the leaders on all of that planning they've done and their plan for the rest of the audit. And then, and only then, they move forward onto fieldwork. Now, the fieldwork stage is where auditors execute that approved plan. They're going to spend weeks and sometimes months testing all of those controls. They probably, hopefully, have periodic meetings with their clients to give them an update on where they are and maybe preview some of the gaps that they've identified or some of the results that they've concluded on. Once fieldwork is done, which means that the auditors finished documenting their work papers, they've finished their testing, they got everything all approved, then they move to that reporting phase. You can see kind of one phase gets complete, then you move to the next phase, then you move to the next phase. So in that reporting phase, the auditors finally compile all of their conclusions into an audit report and deliver it to their clients, but not before typically rounds and rounds of negotiations on the language of those gaps, or the ratings of those identified gaps. And as I'm sure you've experienced, regardless of whether you're an auditor or an audit client, there's a number of challenges with that traditional waterfall approach. It results in unplanned work for our audit clients. It relies on a lot of context switching, which can introduce inefficiencies. Inherently, with the way it's set up, it has choke points at each of those stages and gates. And it often delays communications of those results until the end of the audit when you get to that reporting phase, which leads to stale or outdated results. If you're an audit client, you've probably given feedback to your auditors that they lacked business knowledge, or that your team had to answer the same questions more than once, or that the audit provided kind of limited value to you and your team. And for those of you here who are auditors, you've likely received that feedback at one or more than one points in your career from your audit clients. And finally, these older ways of auditing don't easily facilitate change and the ability to pivot to keep up with today's changing environment. So a number of challenges with this waterfall approach. And we knew this as auditors. This wasn't something that we weren't aware of. So we tried to solve some of those problems, like the inability to respond to change and not delivering our results timely to our audit clients. We tried to solve that through what's called Agile Auditing. Now, Agile Auditing is a sprint-based delivery model where audit work is performed in sprints and results are delivered at the end of each sprint. Just like with waterfall auditing, Agile Auditing assumes one size fits every situation. So just waterfall, you're applying waterfall auditing in every audit. Agile Auditing, a lot of organizations apply Agile Auditing sprint-based approach in every audit as well. And because of this, it really lacks flexibility, and flexibility is really what we need in today's ever-changing environment. Agile Auditing is also a lot of times very output focused. So what this means is that we often measure success using outputs, like the number of audits that we perform in sprints. And while this data point can be helpful, delivering in sprints in and of itself doesn't always directly translate into value for our organizations. And as an internal auditor, our mission as auditors is to protect and enhance organizational value. So audits really need to directly translate to organizational value. So we've made some great strides in our journey, moving from waterfall all the time to some organizations experimenting with agile auditing. But there's definitely more that we need to do. We need to move beyond agile auditing to what's called auditing with agility. So auditing with agility moves beyond those strict frameworks like waterfall and agile auditing, and it really empowers teams to add the most value possible through a flexible, customizable approach to auditing. It enables teams to experience the benefits of an efficient and value-added audit while cultivating and leveraging strong partnerships between auditors and audit clients. The key here in auditing with agility is selecting the best approach for a specific situation and then adjusting along the way as needed. So adding that flexibility. So the goals of auditing with agility, they are inclusive of those goals, the same goals of waterfall auditing, which was to help the organization achieve its objectives by providing value through assurance and insights, as well as the goals of agile auditing, which was to increase the efficiency of the audit process and to be able to respond to change effectively. But in addition to those goals, auditing with agility strives to deliver even more value, and that's through prioritizing work based on what's most valuable to the organization, through delivering results timely, and also focusing on outcomes, not outputs. Auditing with agility takes the evolution, again, waterfall to agile auditing to auditing with agility. It takes that one step further by leveraging ideas from Agile and Scrum, just like Agile auditing did, but it also incorporates concepts from DevOps. So a lot of you here today are probably really familiar with DevOps, but for those of you who aren't, and I certainly wasn't when I started my own journey, DevOps is, I'm going to put it pretty simply, it's a way of working that technology organizations adopted to take two teams, the technology operations team and technology development teams, who historically were kind of adversaries and worked against each other. And what DevOps did is it got them to work together toward a collective goal. So this might sound familiar to my audit clients in the room, as well as my auditors here. That relationship between auditors and management, sometimes those can be adversarial relationships and experiences, and sometimes we can get in each other's way. So what auditing with agility does is it applies some of the concepts from DevOps, where it took two of those groups that were working against each other or not working together super effectively, and it helps auditors and audit clients work together more effectively towards a shared goal. And it's also important to point out, one of the questions that I get pretty frequently is, how do we maintain, as internal auditors, we've got to maintain independence and objectivity. How do we do that? Can we still do that when we work in this way? And the answer is absolutely yes. That's kind of an important thing and theme. So you'll probably hear that a couple times throughout the course of the day. But yes, keep in mind that we can work together really effectively, auditors and audit clients, and still maintain that necessary independence. So auditing with agility consists of three core components. They're value-driven auditing, integrated auditing, and adaptable auditing. Let's dive into each of these three components. We're going to define them and then give examples of practices associated with each of them. Let's start with value-driven auditing. And what that means is that the scope of the audit work is driven by what adds the most value to your organization. You're going to anchor back to organizational value. We talked about auditing with agility focusing on outcomes rather than outputs. So let's touch on the outcomes that are associated with value-driven auditing. Those outcomes include greater alignment between audit work and the organization's priorities, expedited delivery of value, and elevated awareness and ability to respond to risks. And there's a number of activities you can do to put this into practice. There's a couple that are listed out here. Valuing actionable insights over extensive documentation, delivering value frequently, measuring progress through delivery of value, increasing visibility, and constantly optimizing for global goals. We've got detailed explanations of each of these practices and insights as to how you can apply this to audit work from both, it's directed at both auditors and audit clients. So it's not just for auditors of how they can do these things. Audit clients as well are going to get insights there. And that's what's waiting for you inside Beyond Agile Auditing. Let's move on to the second core component, and that is integrated auditing. I'm not talking about integrated auditing of the early 2000s, where IT auditors and operational auditors, instead of working on two separate audits of the same area, work together on a single audit. That's not what I'm talking about. We have got to be there by now. So when I say integrated auditing, sometimes I'll say like integrated auditing 2.0. I mean integrating audit work into our audit clients' daily work, again, while maintaining that independence. I told you you'd hear that a couple times. Just want to make sure that we are comfortable with that. We can maintain our independence while working in this way. So just as in value-driven auditing, outcomes are important here too. The primary outcomes of integrated auditing are increased client engagement and buy-in, stronger client relationships, and greater efficiency during the audit. That one's probably my favorite. I love finding ways to be more efficient, especially with today's pressures and expense pressures. So those are things that our stakeholders can actually do something with too. And those things actually help our organizations. Key things that you can use to implement this component are intentional collaboration between auditors and clients, working together daily, working as one team toward a collective goal, integrated planning, and feedback loops. Finally, our third core component is adaptable auditing. Here's where we add flexibility to the audit process and improve our ability to respond to today's constantly changing environment. Remember, this is something that we knew we needed, that Waterfall wasn't delivering. We tried Agile auditing and we're able to make some progress there, but here's where we can really take that to the next level. So key outcomes of adaptable auditing are greater efficiency, again, one of my favorites, and greater buy-in and engagement. Practices that you can implement to achieve these outcomes are intentionally pausing to determine whether you need to stop auditing or pivot the audit's focus, pursuing simplicity, leveraging self-organizing teams, and limiting the amount of work in process. Again, you're going to find detailed explanations of each of these practices within each of these three core components inside Beyond Agile Auditing. And it'll also talk you through how you can apply them. So not just examples, but here's how you can be successful in applying them. So we've touched on some of the benefits, but I want to make sure that we're intentionally talking through what some of these benefits are of auditing with agility. The first two at the top, the response to change and the increased efficiency, those are what we thought we would get through Agile auditing and what some people have been able to get, but we're going to get so much more here. So another benefit is stronger relationships between auditors and clients. We no longer have to see each other as adversaries or see each other as roadblocks to achieving our objectives. Internal auditors and management all work for the same organization. So we all have a shared objective of helping that organization succeed. So strengthening relationships through auditing with agility is another great benefit. Also, greater engagement. Lucy mentioned, might have a good time during an audit. She wasn't joking, she's serious. I clearly love auditing and have fun with it. And I want everybody else to as well. I know sometimes it's still not going to be like the best thing in the world for everybody. That's where I want it to be, but definitely greater engagement when we're modifying our ways of working and auditing with agility, both from an audit perspective, an auditor perspective, as well as for audit clients. Timely communication. So we can't wait, auditors can't wait to deliver results to their clients months after we start an audit, and audit clients, you can't wait months after we've started to know whether your controls are effective. You need to know that in a really timely fashion. So that's another benefit of auditing with agility. Better alignment with value. So I mentioned earlier that some feedback that auditors get and that clients sometimes receive is they weren't really sure what value they were getting out of the audit report that was delivered or out of the audit work that was done. With auditing with agility, we align the audit work, all of us together, not just the auditors, but in partnership with our clients, we get a stronger alignment of that audit work with what adds value to the organization. And that in the end, and all of these benefits really result in greater buy-in from everyone involved. So greater buy-in from the auditors that the work that they're doing is really important to the organization and going to make a difference. Greater buy-in from clients that yes, the time that I'm investing into this audit and sitting with the auditors and working through this is really going to add value to the organization, and then greater buy-in from key stakeholders as well. So all of these benefits really increase the value that we add to our organization, both as auditors and as audit clients. So now you're hyped up about auditing with agility. I can feel it. I can sense it. You need to know how to go about doing that, right? So first, you're going to start with your highly motivated people, both auditors and audit clients. So find out who is most excited and energized by trying this different approach. Start with them. Eventually, you're going to bring on other people, but that's going to come with time. Start with the people who are really looking forward to this and really motivated for this. Now that you know who you want to start with, what's next? So you need to give that group a safe space to experiment in. There will be trial and error. There will be things that don't go exactly as planned. That's okay. Empower that team to experiment with these different ways of working and build upon what they learn. Treat the failures. So basically, anytime something doesn't go exactly as you hoped or turn out the way you wanted it to, don't call them failures, treat them as learning opportunities. And that'll help your team stay encouraged even when they face adversity. Next, you're going to identify your desired outcomes. What is it you want to achieve on this next audit or with your overall journey to agility? Maybe it's increased efficiency. Again, that's my favorite. Or maybe it's better alignment of your work with true value to the organization. Regardless of what that outcome is that you want or what those outcomes are, knowing where you want to go is going to help you figure out how to get there. Next, you're going to start with a single audit. You'll want to evaluate the unique attributes of that audit. So your client, for the auditors in the room, how do your clients manage their work? How do they prefer communications? Do they have meetings that you can join in, or do they prefer separate meetings? So figure out the unique attributes of that particular audit, of those particular clients, of the audit team that's assigned to that audit, and figure out what practices are going to best deliver those desired outcomes, given that particular situation. You'll pick a practice from each of the 3 core components: the value-driven auditing, integrated auditing, and adaptable auditing. And you're going to pick those practices that align with those key outcomes that you really want, and that they fit the unique attributes of that particular audit that you're experimenting with. And we're going to start small. We're going to pick 1 practice from each of the 3 core components, not 10. You might even just pick 1 practice to start with for your first one. And this is really going to help limit the overwhelm, because this is a change. We haven't changed the way we've audited. We experimented with Agile auditing. Audit clients, you're used to getting an audit the same way. So this is a big change, and people might get overwhelmed with that change. So really want to start small so we can limit that overwhelm. And that's also going to help us have greater customization with this experience. So while you're going through this experiment and afterwards, but don't wait till the end, do this throughout as well. Pause and reflect on what went really well, what you learned, and what you're going to do differently going forward. And then you're going to keep iterating and adjusting as you go. And that's, in a nutshell, how you audit with agility. I do want to leave all of you with some key takeaways that you can take action on today. Of course, I'm going to recommend that you buy your copy of Beyond Agile Auditing today if you haven't already pre-ordered it, but I'm going to give you even more than that. So other than that, for the auditors with us today, so audit clients, I will get to you just in a minute. So for my auditors on the call, here's a couple things you can do right now. And I will also say, I keep saying auditors, but this goes for groups outside of internal audit, other groups that provide assurance and advice, like risk management teams, quality control teams, those types of groups too. Anywhere you see the word auditors or where I'm talking to auditors, I'm talking to you too. So first thing to do, schedule some time to brainstorm and actually make improvements on a regular basis. We all get caught up on what's next on the audit plan. So we've got an audit, we're finishing that, we've got another audit, and we think we'll have time to make improvements later, but if we're not intentional about setting aside time and protecting that time to make improvements, it's never going to happen. I know this has been personally for me, that's been a huge development opportunity. And when I do take the time and protect the time, it's amazing, the innovation that can happen. So I'd also recommend starting with feedback loops. I'd also tell you not to wait for an audit to finish or even the next one to start. Start with 2 audit clients, one where you already have a really strong relationship and one where you need a better relationship. Ask each of them for feedback. Ask them what works really well during an audit and what they'd like to see improved on their next audit. Now's not the time to get defensive. It might not always be what you want to hear, but keep in mind, as auditors, that's part of what we do too. We tell people what they need to hear, even if it's not always what they want to hear. This is the same thing. So you're requesting feedback. Listen to what they have to say. Digest that and take action on it right away. And 2 things are going to happen there. First, your clients are going to appreciate that you've asked for their feedback. It shows you care about them, you care about their opinions, and you do. Second, you're going to get insights on what actions you can take to improve the audit process. Now you're equipped with an idea on how to improve that process. Find a practice from the book that's going to deliver that improvement and start taking action. So those are some things that my auditors on the call here can start doing today. Promise next step for my clients too. So for my audit clients or non-auditors who are here with us, this book isn't just for auditors. It's not just for other risk and assurance type roles. It's for you too. Here is how you can start influencing agility right away. Similar to what I just mentioned to the auditors on the call, clients, I want you to talk to your auditors today too. Tell them about these better ways of working and how they can improve their effectiveness and their efficiency and provide more value to the organization. You can tell them about the event we have next week. We've got another similar call that's focused primarily on auditors as an audience. So tell them about that event, encourage them to sign up and attend. And you can attend with them as well. There's always going to be information for everyone to learn, regardless of which side of the table you're sitting on. Second key takeaway for my audit clients in the room that you can take action on today is offering to coach your auditors. A lot of you are already familiar with better ways of working, maybe not so much in an audit fashion, but think about what ways of working have really helped you. Is it daily stand-ups, feedback loops, or increasing visibility of your work? Think about those types of things and offer to coach your auditors. And really what that's doing is taking the first step of activating a feedback loop. You're going to give your auditors feedback on how to improve the audit experience. And you're going to benefit from that too. Remember that feedback loops are blameless, and both parties, both the auditors and the audit clients, are going to share in some of that responsibility to take action on that feedback going forward. Here's where you're going to partner together. So partnering, independence, key themes throughout this too. So let's say you're an audit client and you don't have experience with Agile or DevOps practices. That's okay. You also can take action today to influence agility in an audit and start experiencing a much better audit experience and hopefully having fun. So you're going to start by brainstorming about what a better audit experience and a better relationship with your auditors is going to look like. One of my favorite questions that I like to ask is, if you had a magic wand, how would you use it to create a better audit experience, and what would that look like? So ask yourself that question. Suggest that you work more closely together during the next planning session in an audit that's coming up. Schedule regular touch bases to grab coffee with your auditors and tell them about the exciting work you're doing, even if you don't have an audit on the horizon anytime soon. Help educate your auditors so that they better understand your business and what's important to you. And what that's going to do is it's going to help them focus on what really matters to your business the next time they come in and do an audit. It's also going to help create or strengthen your relationship with your auditors, which is absolutely crucial in order for both of you to achieve your objectives and for both of you to set your organizations up for success. I also want to say this is a journey. Unfortunately, in the 20 minutes or 30 minutes that we've been on the call, I can't give you the answers to everything. I don't have all the answers to everything, but I can give you the tools to continue on your journey so that you can experience a much better audit experience, regardless of whether you're an auditor or a client. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also check out my website, ClarissaLucas.com, and you can either go to my website or scan the QR code to subscribe to my newsletter. And with that newsletter, I share insights for both auditors and audit clients on better ways of auditing. So Lucy, I'm going to hand it back to you for some Q&A.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, if you guys want to start adding things to the QA section or chat, I'm going to get us going with a couple over here first. So Clarissa, what role do auditors play in an organization for our non-auditors out there? Can you kind of clarify that quickly?
Absolutely. So, and this is a pretty common question that I get from people who haven't grown up in auditing like I have. So essentially, our role as internal auditors is to add value and improve an organization's operations, which might not sound like what you typically think of when you think of the auditors, the enforcers are here, but that's really what our role is in an organization. We exist, and part of this is with the mission of internal audit. We exist to enhance and protect organizational value, and we do that by providing risk-based and objective assurance and insights. We bring a fresh and impartial perspective to risk, so we're not in the deep of all of the day-to-day operations like the rest of the organization is. So we may be asking kind of some elementary questions, but those questions are bringing a fresh perspective and thinking about things that when you're in the thick of things, you might not be thinking about. We are internal auditors, so we have shared goals with our clients and our overall organization. I say we're all on the same team, and I know people get tired of hearing that, but we really are. So we're uniquely positioned to add value because we have that fresh perspective, and we also have shared goals with our clients. So yeah, basically, we are here to add value, help the organization succeed by providing assurance and insights on both current and emerging risks.
Great. So why is auditing with agility the next best step for people?
Things are changing so quickly. I gave a talk 2 weeks ago and talked about, we thought things were changing quickly before the pandemic hit, and then boom, a pandemic hits, and things have just changed even more rapidly and more rapidly. So we really need a better process as auditors to keep up with those changes. The things we're auditing are changing fast, and we need to be able to partner better with our clients so that we can keep up with and stay ahead of those changes. We need to work together and stop working against each other. And I know it's not in every situation that auditors and clients work against each other. In some situations, there is still an adversarial relationship, and auditing with agility helps repair and strengthen that relationship, working together towards that collective goal. So moving beyond just from adversaries to, like I said, dealing with each other or tolerating each other to where we can really leverage each other's strengths. So auditors bring that fresh perspective that management might not have or audit clients might not have. Audit clients have that deep knowledge of whatever product or process that they're accountable for that auditors might not have. So really bringing that diverse skill set together, being able to respond to change and having flexibility. And that's where kind of auditing with agility differentiates itself from other practices. Having that flexibility so we can keep up with change is really why it's the next best step.
Great. Here is one from our audience. Will the book address audit of DevOps practices considering segregation of duty? Example of a developer can't change production without control, etc.
So the book doesn't specifically address DevOps, and I've gotten the question about SOD. I do think I've got an example in the book where it's specific to segregation of duties, and we used to test it by just let's get access lists and see who has access, but that's not going to answer the question. Like that's not going to. That's still going to support. Oh, we need a segregation of duties control when the business is operating differently. So while it doesn't have a specific section to talk about addressing SOD and working in a DevOps way, auditing with agility in and of itself, the core concept supports all of that. So if you think about waterfall auditing or traditional ways of auditing, the auditors have their list of here's what we think we want to audit, and we're looking for that SOD control. With auditing with agility, the auditors and clients are going to work together to understand how does the process and how does the business work today. So instead of just saying, I need to look for segregation of duties, it's going to say, so here's a risk that code is promoted to production and it does bad things. So we're gonna use super high level risk terminology here. So risk is that things get promoted to production and bad things happen. We used to maybe protect that or mitigate that risk using segregation of duties. So if we're using the old way of auditing, we're just going to come in and look for segregation of duties. But when we do what's called integrated auditing, which is part of or integrated planning, which is part of the integrated auditing that I mentioned, auditors are going to work with their clients to understand how is that risk managed today? Maybe it's automated code reviews. Maybe it's peer reviews, even though people have the same access. Maybe there's a lot of different ways that risk could be managed. It doesn't have to be segregation of duties. So again, not a specific section on that, but the whole concept of auditing with agility is going to help address those types of situations.
All right, great. Here's another one that kind of touches on things you said there. Could you share an example from your experience to illustrate the way you make auditing with agility work?
Absolutely. So I said in the end of the little presentation piece that this has been a journey. You'll read in the book about my own personal journey with this and things that didn't go so well, that we learned from. So an example would be, there was an audit, and this was one of our early experiments. So there was an audit, and this is the time where Agile auditing was the buzz. Didn't quite know what it was or how to implement that, but I knew we wanted to add agility to our work. So my audit clients came to me and said, hey, we work in sprints. We manage through stand-ups. We do all of these things. Let's not add an audit on top of that. Let's figure out how we can get the audit worked into that. So we worked with our clients. We understood, how do you manage your work? Tell me more about these stand-ups. Tell me more about this task board. And we identified ways that we could do the audit work, get that wrapped into management's work. So it wasn't them committing for the next 2 weeks to do these things. And oh, by the way, now there's audit work on top of that. It was, here's the audit work. How can you incorporate that into your work as an audit client and make it planned work instead of unplanned work? So just one example of a way that that I was able to apply agility into the audit process. There's also case studies in the book. So other organizations have implemented pieces of this as well. So there's plenty of examples on specific practices too of how some of those have been implemented.
Great, thank you. All right. Does your book cover auditing as a service with emphasis on automation on tooling?
So it does not talk about, I mentioned very briefly about tooling. This is more about processes. So I don't get into specific tools. I may define a couple of tools that I've referenced in some of my own examples, but we're not focused on tools in this. We do kind of talk a little very briefly about automation and machine learning and things like that, but that is not the focus of the book. The focus of the book is more of enhancing the ways of auditing, ways of working within auditing, the audit process itself. And that's then applicable when you're auditing automation or automating part of your audit process.
Okay. All right. So you've kind of touched on this, but is it a book that's primarily for auditors, or what would you recommend audit clients specifically get out of this when they're reading?
Yeah, it is not just a book for auditors, it's for auditors and audit clients. And then I kind of slip this in there too. It's not just for auditors there are other organizations and other parts of the organization that provide assurance and advice. So auditors and clients, they can each individually realize benefits from the techniques that I describe in the book, even if the other doesn't totally participate, but the true benefits are going to come when those groups work together. So I would highly recommend auditors share this with your clients, clients share this with your auditors. Specifically, I think the use case for auditors is a bit more clear, that it's got audit in the title, but specifically for audit clients and why they really need to read the book. First, audit work isn't part of your planned daily work as a client. You're not an auditor, so you're probably feeling more of the pain when an audit comes to your space, more so than the auditors who do this for a living. It's in addition to what you do every day. So you've got your work that you're accountable for, and then you've got this audit work on top of this. So this book kind of shows you how you can influence incorporating that into your daily work to reduce some of that pain. Second, there's a really big opportunity for clients to get a ton of value from an audit. I mentioned before, one of the pieces of feedback that audit clients sometimes provide to auditors is they didn't see the value in an audit. And when those audits are performed using those traditional approaches, the value that an audit can provide either isn't there or it's not totally clear to everyone involved. And this book is going to equip audit clients with the knowledge and specific actions that they can take to get a more clear value proposition out of an audit. Just a couple things.
Great. So how would you kind of explain how this is different from other kind of traditional frameworks like waterfall or agile auditing specifically? Like, how does this kind of differ?
Yeah, so it's not a framework, and that's probably the simplest differentiation there. So, you know, it's not just another framework. It's not a checklist where if you do these things, suddenly your problems are solved and you're now auditing with agility. It's kind of funny because when we were going through the different rounds of editing the manuscript, we went back and forth on whether we should capitalize the A. This is going to sound really minor, but words are important. Capitalization is important. And there was a lot of thought that went into this because I didn't want people to think this is just another framework, because it's not. So it back and forth on whether we should capitalize the A's on auditing and agility for auditing with agility. I didn't want to make that capitalization happen because I didn't want people to think, oh, this is just another strict framework and I just like put it on top of the audit process. But I also wanted to make it clear that it is a thing. It's a mindset, it's a flexible approach. So we did end up capitalizing the A's and auditing with agility, but I do make clear call outs throughout the book, and I'll continue to say this on here too. This is not a strict framework. It's definitely something different. It's a mindset, it's a way of working. And what's so special about it is that it can be applied at any organization. So regardless of the size or the maturity or the industry, it's not a binary like do sprints or not do sprints, or do phased or not do phased. Like there are different practices in there that, because it's flexible, because it's not a framework, you can apply it anywhere.
Right. Yeah, I think we've seen that happen a lot with things like Agile and Lean and
Mm-hmm.
DevOps, the word as a framework instead of kind of the more philosophy behind it.
Yes, definitely. And one of the things that, you know, people ask me too, like the difference between agile auditing and auditing with agility. When you see agile auditing, people think it's a thing you do, like we're going to do agile auditing. And that's why I really want to distinguish this of it's not a thing you do. It's not a framework to implement. It's a way of doing things. We audit with agility.
Yes. All right. So if someone is intrigued by these ideas, what's the first thing you'd recommend they try implementing at their next audit, whether they're auditor or non-auditor?
And so I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say you don't even have to wait for your next audit, because it might not be for another 6 months or a year or a couple years, those feedback loops. So what you do today in implementing feedback loops is going to help your experience during that next audit. So if you're an audit client, call up your auditors today. Find out, I mean, if you don't already know when they're coming to audit you, that would be helpful to know. And they may not know either, because with everything changing as rapidly as it does, having a audit plan for the year set in stone like doesn't work anymore. So it's going to be dynamic as well. So call up your auditors, talk about what's going on in your space, provide them feedback. So they might not be asking for it. If they're on the call, they should be asking for it. But if they're not, they don't wait for them to ask you for how you can help them and what a better audit experience looks like for you. And same with auditors. I'm going to do the same thing. Feedback loops. They are completely, I think they're totally underutilized in an audit process today. So activate those today.
Makes sense. You can't fix something if you don't know what's wrong with it, you know?
Exactly. And the other thing, Lucy, I'm glad you said that. The other thing with feedback loops is just knowing about something without taking action on it isn't really that helpful either. So you can't fix and address what you don't know, but then knowing about it without taking action on it isn't helpful either. So with those feedback loops, both provide feedback and receive feedback, and then think about how can you take action on this and then actually take action on it. So that's the other thing is like we get all this like feedback and we don't do anything with it. Well, that's not useful.
Yeah, it's good to keep in mind for everything.
Yes.
This is a question is slightly more for me. Will there be will there be a recording so I can share further with our organization? Yes, this is getting recorded. It should go up on YouTube later today. You will get an email that'll have a link to that. So anyone who attended or signed up should get an email. So yes, it will be out there.
It's helpful, Lucy. Somebody asked me that earlier today.
Oh, good.
I had the same question.
Yes, it will be available because not everyone can tune in at the same time. We understand that.
Yep.
All right. So how was your how has your excuse me, how has your perception of value or pain points changed since you started auditing with agility?
Yeah, my perception has changed pretty drastically since I started my journey with auditing with agility. I used to think that getting our audits done on time and covering as many risks and controls as we could in that time frame was like super valuable to the organization. And it is valuable. It's not that that doesn't add value, but I didn't really even realize what other value we could be adding and delivering. So and really started working with my clients more closely, more collaboratively, and seeking to really understand what was important to them and how that impacted the larger organization. So not just focused on the process or the area under review, but how that fits into the broader organization. I learned how my clients and stakeholders really define value. And I do need to maintain my independence as an auditor and my objectivity, but knowing what my clients really valued gave me the information I needed to make better informed decisions about what to audit, when to audit, how deep to go, those types of things. So really, yeah, it was like, let's get this audit done on time. Let's audit as many risks as we can fit in that time frame. And that's totally shifted to how can we add the value? How can we get that value delivered and in our clients' hands sooner and get their buy-in on it too? So definitely different. And then, you know, being more collaborative and strengthening those relationships with my clients. Not only can I see pain points happening, but they're more open to providing that feedback and letting me know where the pain points are for them because they know that we're going to do something about it. It's because we're opening those feedback loops, because we're taking action on things. We can't take action on every single thing, or the action that we take might not look the way that somebody jokingly said, like, oh, come back to audit me. Like, when's the best time to do this audit? How about in 20 years? Like, oh, I get you, but but taking action on it and listening has really helped strengthen those relationships. So I can see their pain points and I'm made aware of their pain points more intentionally so we can do something about them.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, here's another one. So they say, I don't have a lot of audit experience, but apparently the level of original defiance depends on who orders the audit. I did my best to go over it, but it's hard. What's your angle?
Can you repeat that, Lucy?
Yes. So they said they don't have much experience with audit. They say the level of original defiance depends on who orders the audit or order the audit. It's not a term I'm familiar with.
It's I'm not familiar with that either.
All right,
This could
maybe,
be one that I could take offline and maybe circle back with.
yeah, and
Is
ask
that
her if you
fair?
want to maybe clarify in the chat if you have anything to add to that, or yeah, we can look into this and do an offline response. All right, so I think we're going to wrap up probably in the next couple minutes. So if you've got any other kind of lingering questions, now is the time to ask them. And I'm going to see what I have left here. All right, so which part of auditing with agility do you find the most challenging and which the most rewarding?
Yeah, the most challenging, you kind of hinted at it with one of the questions from earlier of, this isn't a framework. We're auditors and, we started SOX auditing back in the day with checklists and things like that. So we're looking for that comfortable framework just to tell us, do these things and you're on your way. But it's not a framework. So we don't have a list of do exactly these things and execute these things. So replacing a framework with a mindset was probably the most challenging for me personally and for my team and my clients too. They were used to the audits the way that they were done before. Might not have been huge fans of it, but there is something to be said for that comfort and consistency. The most rewarding. So probably it's kind of tough to narrow down because there's a lot. I clearly love this and I'm passionate about it, but I would say it's seeing auditors and clients working together and having fun while doing their jobs and adding value to the organization. Like I've said, I love auditing. I've always found this to be a really, really fun profession, but to see my team and my clients kicking off a meeting and talking about just not work related stuff, like they're sharing a love for classic rock before we're digging into the stuff that we're testing or things that's going on, like that really, it like warmed my heart and made me feel like, okay, we've got this. This is a fun relationship. We know we're here to do things. We're seeing each other as people, not adversaries, not roadblocks. And then not just during those meetings, but seeing those relationships stay strong after the audit is finished is also awesome. So it's not just a let's maintain relationships. But then we're also continuing to add that value to the organization throughout. So if we just stick with like, we're going to come and audit you every 3 years because that's what the risk assessment says to do, we're missing out on those opportunities to identify ways, times where it might make sense to come in and do maybe not a regular audit, but provide some advice with a new implementation or things like that. And so having fun, building those relationships, the clients now call the auditors like, hey, I need your thoughts on this, instead of like, oh, the auditors are coming. So yeah, that's been probably the most rewarding.
Well, that's great. I think that's a good place for us to end today. So thank you so much, Clarissa. Thank you everybody out there for coming. As I mentioned, and Clarissa mentioned, there's going to be fireside chat next Wednesday. I think it's around the same time as this one, in which she'll go a bit more in depth about the auditor experience. And Clarissa, if you have a few words you want to say about that.
Yeah, I am super excited about this one. So I'm going to be interviewing Trent Russell and Becca Kinney. So Trent Russell actually had me on, it was the first podcast I had ever been on. So he's the founder of Green Skies Analytics that does audit analytics. He's also the host of the Audit podcast, and he interviews thought leaders from the audit profession. So super excited to get his thoughts and perspectives on the book. And then Becca Kinney, she is the chief audit executive at Anywhere Real Estate. And when you read the book, you will see case studies featuring Becca throughout the book as well. So we met at an audit conference last year, and she was doing a presentation on Agile Auditing. Wanted to pick her brain, found out she's doing a lot more than just like the traditional Agile auditing. So she's in case studies in the book as well. So going to get both of their perspectives.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. And again, aimed at auditors, but I'm sure there'll be a lot there for non-auditors as well, even if it's just kind of observing the types of questions and pain points that auditors experience. There's still utility to that.
For sure.
All right. Well, as I said before, there's going to be a recording, so watch your emails. It should come through tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.